feeling good about yourself and this and that, or whatever. They have no concrete knowledge of spirituality. And if you don't understand what is the difference between matter and spirit, then how can you actually discriminate whether I'm actually engaging in material activity or spiritual activity? So the illusory energy is very powerful like that. It dangles all these different shapes and colors. And we're bewildered, like the kaleidoscope. You know what a kaleidoscope is? And the end of it's just like, basically it's just three colors, red, blue, and yellow. And you keep swirling it, twiddling it around and around and around. Whoa, look at those cool shapes. Look at those cool colors, But it's just three colors. You're just repeatedly turning around and around and around. In order to be able to cut through this dense darkness of ignorance, we need real transcendental knowledge, real practical application of what is spiritual technology. Otherwise, at every moment, the material energy is always just calling urgency, urgency, urgency. Sometimes when there's a big siren that goes off and the war, something sometimes you're doing book distribution close to these places. The siren goes off, a fire siren, and everyone's like, you feel that sense of urgency? It's like that in the material world. People are just so urgent to get their sense gratification. Oh, I gotta get it now. And they're so focused, so determined. And I'm thinking, well, why can't we have that same sense of urgency to want to engage in Krishna service? So Maya instills in the heart of the conditioned soul this urgency to want to be under her gun. And it's very attractive for the conditioned soul, especially this form of the opposite sex. Srila Prabhupada actually, this reminds me of one story when Srila Prabhupada was once traveling in the Rath cart in one Rath Yatra festival, and he was surrounded with all his sannyasi disciples. And as they were traveling, as the Rath festival was going on, Srila Prabhupada pointed out some very attractive ladies. And pointed out and said to the sannyasis, can't you see? Aren't they beautiful? They're attractive. And the sannyasis were looking at each other, What's Prabhupada saying, What do we say to Srila Prabhupada, He's saying that the women are beautiful. What do we say? They were bewildered. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to respond. But Srila Prabhupada was just acknowledging, the women beautiful. But you can't touch. Therefore Krishna's pleasure. Therefore Krishna's service, in other words. It's true, there is beauty in material nature. There's so much beauty in the illusory energy, but how do you distinguish between something that's material and spiritual? Rite artamyat patyeta. Oh Brahma, in the second canto, the Chatur Shloki of the Bhagavatam. Oh Brahma, that which you see, that is that energy which you do not understand to be part of me. Know it as my illusory energy. That reflection which appears to be in darkness. So how do you distinguish between material and spiritual? It's whether you see it in relationship to the source. So there's so much reflective beauty in this world. There's so much reflective attractivity in this world. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, know that all opulent and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. All the beautiful things that you see in the material nature that's so bedazzling for the conditioned soul is just a spark, a tiny spark of Krishna's energy. So he says to Lord Brahma, if you can't see it in relationship to me, then that is Maya. So we take into consideration, yes, there is beauty, there's grandeur, there's majesty, there's attractiveness in this material world, because ultimately it's coming from Krishna. But if we can't see it in relationship to Krishna, then that's Maya. So what does it mean to see things in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? If I see something in relationship to someone else, what do? I engage that object for that person's service, pleasure. So when we see something that's in relationship to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we engage that object in Krishna's service. And that this is making the distinction between what is actually material and spiritual. How I see things, my perspective, how do I see things in this world? Is it in relationship to God, or is it not in relationship to God? That is making the distinction between what is matter and what is spirit. And people have no understanding, they have no clue of this. Once Srila Prabhupada was asked by a reporter in Melbourne, your disciples, they're selling so many books, they're accumulating so much money, and you're meant to be spiritual. All I see is big cars, big temples, and so much money. How is this spiritual? And you'd think Srila Prabhupada would be really defensive about this. Maybe, like he was fully on the attack mode, on the lion mode when it came to preaching. He says, spiritual? Spiritual? You tell me what is spiritual. You tell me what is the difference between material, what is the difference between spiritual. And he was challenging the reporter. You tell me what's the difference. Of course, she couldn't tell the difference. She had no idea what the difference between matter and spirit was. Actually, she was probably speculating, thinking, being spiritual means denying all material comforts, denying all material luxuries, and therefore you're living a very cruel life. And it looked like that she was trying to get this out of Srila Prabhupada. Look how your disciples just living such poor, niggardly lives. They're just dressed up in these cloths, and they're getting up in the morning and they live in a pack in a little place. I guess back then there were probably like 50 to 100 brahmacharis living in one little tiny place, is that right? Something like that. So it looks, from the external perspective, it doesn't look very satisfying. They just look miserable. Because I'm sure Prabhupada was challenging him. What is the difference between matter and soul? You tell me, you tell me, you tell me. She couldn't answer. And another reporter in the same occasion asked Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, there are so many false gurus in this material world. There's so many false gurus, people are getting cheated. Again, do you think Srila Prabhupada was being defensive when he came to preaching? No. Why are you a fool? His response was, why are you foolish? Why are you being fooled? You should not be fooled. You should be educated. You should be spiritually educated so you're not being fooled. Why are you a fool? So he's challenging the reporter like this, Prabhupada, there's so many false gurus, people getting fooled. Why are you a fool? Get educated. Understand what is the real authority of spiritual technology, in other words. Why are you a fool? You're a human being, you should understand these things. Become educated in these matters. Don't become fooled. And then the reporter was getting a little hesitant, and he asked Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada challenged him. You're saying you're getting cheated by false gurus? You tell me, what is the goal of life? I just heard this lecture just yesterday, so it was very fresh. What is the goal of life? And then the reporter was a little bit hesitant. Well, I don't know, I want to answer that. But Prabhupada was very, very challenging. You tell me, what is the goal of life? So the reporter said, okay, well, the goal of life is to be happy within myself. And what was Prabhupada's response? Guess what Prabhupada's response was? This is dog happiness! This is dog happiness! First you ask me, whether, there's all these false gurus, and you can't distinguish what is a real guru, what is a false guru, and you can't even tell me the goal of life. If you don't know what is the goal of life, how can you choose who is the right guru to help you? First, understand the goal of life, and then you pick a guru who can help you under your circumstance. but you don't even know the goal of life. He just says, it's a really revolutionary concept that Prabhupada's pointing out. I just want to be happy within myself. I just want to feel good within myself. It's just, have you noticed this is like this big new age hodgepodge, arty-farty kind of like stuff that comes out of people's mouth when you're preaching to them at the loft or something like that. This is such a common thing. I just want to feel good in myself. I just want to be happy within myself. What was Prabhupada's response? Dog happiness. In this way, Srila Prabhupada is teaching us how to be very incisive and always injecting Krishna consciousness in every circumstance. He was never being defensive. This is dog happiness. And if you think about it, how is it dog happiness? How is this being happy within oneself dog happiness? Look at the dogs. What does a dog do? It just barks, right? It's happy within himself. It's just like expressing itself through its senses. Barking away. You see, you observe the dogs. It's happy within itself. Anyone can express themselves through sense gratification. It's happy within itself. The cat, what does a cat do? It's just rolling around the ground. You tickle it and it's purring. Oh, purr. It's happy within itself. Big deal. Animal happiness. You see the chickens. It's scratching the ground and pecking the floor, right? Pecking and scratching the ground. You see the chickens in the farm, It's happy within itself. Big deal. You see the fish. You see the little people have a little goldfish like that, and they put the little breadcrumbs on top, and you see the fish bobbing up. The fish are really attached to their tongue, and they're just taking the little fish food. And the fish are happy within themselves. So Prabhupada's pointing out a very revolutionary concept about what is real standard of happiness. Nayam deha deha bhajamya loke kashtan kaman ahate vidbhujamye tapodivya putrakayena satvam brahma sokya tvanantam. Human life is not meant simply to get the same happiness as that of the hogs and dogs. He would lecture from this shloka from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam constantly. I've read so many lectures from Prabhupada from this shloka, just making this point. Dog happiness, hog happiness. But it's such a revolutionary concept that people get intimidated. What do you mean? I just want to feel good within myself. I just want to be happy within myself. But this is dog happiness, hog happiness. Real happiness is Brahma Sokya Tvanantam. If you want real happiness, he points out, you have to get rid of Janma Mrityu Jari Doka Dushna Parsha. You have to make a solution for birth, death, old age, and disease. That is your impediment for real happiness. Human form of life is meant to understand Brahma Sokya Tvanantam, happiness that has neither beginning or end. This is one of the great things Julian Yatra Prabhu, actually, he gave the class at the loft last Sunday. It was a brilliant point, actually. He was pointing out to all the guests that people really don't believe in happiness these days. Because our standard of happiness in the material world is just so absurd. It's just so embarrassing that you can't even call it happiness. He gave all these examples, whether you were down here or up there, and up here is like ecstatic happiness, and in the bottom here is kind of like average happiness, and below average happiness. And he was asking everyone in the loft, where's your happiness in this bar? And everyone's like, well, average happiness. Maybe a little bit over, maybe under average happiness. But no one actually had a clue, no one had an idea of what happiness, ecstatic happiness, blissful happiness. He was making this point. And then he said, something that really stuck out with me. People actually don't really believe in happiness in this day and age because they just don't know what it is. They're just so stuck in the rut that happiness is just about senses and sense objects, which is, according to the Bhagavatam, is just dog happiness. Dayam deha deho bhajamne loke kastan kamanahate vidbhujame. Happiness fit for the hogs and dogs, simply that eat stool. Nothing different. So therefore, people in this day and age are thinking, wow, this Hare Krishnas, they're really intense. They get a little bit intimidated by that, I just want to be happy within myself. I just want to feel good about myself. And the worst thing is when devotees start talking like this. It's so good and refreshing to hear from Srila Prabhupada because he really just cuts it to pieces. You know, Prabhu, you know, the Brahman show, Prabhu, I just want to feel good about myself, Prabhu. Next time you get that feeling, you just remind, dog happiness. Prabhupada's so nectar to hear these things from Srila Prabhupada because it reminds us of the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is to stop repeated birth and death, samsara. And to the extent that we're still totally absorbed in trying to gratify our senses, we don't understand these simple points. Actually, towards the end of that conversation with the reporter, Srila Prabhupada was making the point. All dull-headed. It's so difficult to preach in this atmosphere because people are just so dull. And why are people so dull? Because they're just totally engaged in sense gratification. Sense gratification makes you so stupid. It just stupefies you. It destroys your intelligence. And the more you engage in sense gratification, you can't even discriminate anymore. Am I happy? Am I miserable? It's a very tragic situation. People can no longer distinguish whether they're even happy or miserable. They're just like, it's kind of like zombie mode. You know, just all like tense ignorance. So this is the tragic situation. There is no real happiness in this material world, and people become intimidated by that. We don't say it like a platitude. The devotees of the Lord, as Prabhupada explains here, they're all merciful. The devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are teaching us how, by engaging our senses in Krishna's service, this is bringing us the greatest joy. And devotees should show by their example. Whatever action a great person performs, common people follow. And if the common people are saying, look at these devotees, they're happily engaged in Krishna's service. This is actually the best preaching. Therefore, at the end of this purport, the Prabhupada explains, but a Vaishnava preacher attracts their hearts to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. We attract people to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by showing them by example how joyful it is to serve Krishna. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, look at these devotees just walking around. I'm not saying that's the case. But sometimes, you know, as the years go by, you get a bit grindy in your Krishna consciousness. God forbid, it never happens to any of you. The familiarity sinks in. You know, the idea that maybe, you know, Krishna consciousness is just to be having some kind of religion, be a card-carrying member of the Hare Krishna society. You know, I belong to the Hare Krishnas, like a rubber stamp. But what does it mean to belong to the Hare Krishna society? It means devotional service. And the more your life is full of devotional service, the more blissful it becomes. And as devotees, we need to show that. How the joy of serving Krishna, the joy of giving Krishna to others, the joy of giving Krishna's senses pleasure. And you see, when people see that, wow, look, the devotees are happy. This is the best preaching. Otherwise, as years go on, due to inattentiveness in our sadhana bhakti process, the tendency is that we may become familiar. The same Prabhus, the same Madhajis, the same temple, the same service, the same kitchen, the same vegetables. It's just all the same. It's not like that. We can't have our consciousness infiltrated like this by the illusory energy due to inattentiveness in our bhakti sadhana. And when we start to think like this, then Krishna consciousness becomes a real grind. It doesn't matter what ashram you're in. Oh, this Prabhu, you know, he used to be really friendly, but now he's like a real jerk. You know, I hear it all the time. You know, this service, I was really ecstatic in the beginning, but now I'm just like, I think I'm gonna get married. you know. Like that really kind of sinks in a little bit. It's called familiarity. It's the greatest enemy in your bhakti career. Familiarity means that the mundane, the material energy is beginning to infiltrate your consciousness. I hear it all the time, I think I should get married. Nothing wrong with marriage, but I'm just saying, in my ashram, it happens. People get familiar. It's just the same old guy, same old problem, same old thing, same old idiosyncrasies. How long can I live with this? The same person, day after day after day, just shoot me in the head. When you start thinking like that, it means that the familiarity is creeping in. We've failed to see our transcendental situation, the most glorious situation with God right there on the stage, and God's devotees, and we can engage in so much service, opportunity, but it's all a question of how you perceive things. Again, how do you see things in relationship to God? Because as soon as you see things in relationship to yourself, then it becomes mundane. Oh, this Prabhu, he used to be really nice to me, but now he's a jerk. It's your mundane vision. Can you see, understand how Krishna is purifying your existence? Immediately when you see something in relationship to your sense gratification, that's when the familiarity becomes a reality in your life in Krishna consciousness. And you become like, oh, Prabhu, I need to get married. Oh, Prabhu, I need a new service. Oh, Prabhu, I think I need to go to a new yatra. I don't like this temple presentation. You just can't figure it out. You can juggle yourself materially on and on and on, life after life. You can put the burden this shoulder or that shoulder on your head, but you still got the burden. And what's the burden? The burden is you're not seeing things in relationship to Krishna. If you're not seeing things in relation to Krishna, then you can't engage that thing in Krishna's service. It means that you're engaging it for your pleasure. And when you're engaging things for your pleasure, then things become mundane really quickly. I'll let you know that now. But when you change your perspective, oh, this is Krishna's property. This person is for Krishna's service. This object is for Krishna's pleasure. Then immediately, when you have that consciousness, so many opportunities for Krishna's service open up. Right? Because when you're thinking that I want to engage this object for my pleasure, how much can you actually squeeze out of that object until you get sick of it? And that's why we get sick of other people. I tried to squeeze this person. Oh, give me some satisfaction. You can try it. Pick up your best friend in whatever ashram you're in, squeeze them, squeeze them till the head pops off, rub them and whatever you do with the body, and then until their face turns blue, and then you just get sick of it. It doesn't matter what ashram you're in. You can do it to your wife, you can do it to your husband, you can squeeze that person, try to get some pleasure out of it. You're just going to get sick of it. That's how Krishna set things up. You want to play with fire, you get burnt. You want to play with Maya, you get burnt. You touch the fire, you get burnt. And you wonder why you're burnt. Oh, I got burnt. You played with fire. So it's all about our perception. You want to engage things for Krishna's service. If you want to engage things for yourself, then there's so many limitations, because the material world is full of limitations. You're trying to suck out of the material energy, it's full of limitations. And then when eventually the limitations become predominantly right there in front of your face, then you become frustrated. Oh, why did he treat me like that? Why did she treat me like that? What's wrong with the service anyway? I want to get out of this place. You become frustrated by the circumstance because you're seeing it with a mundane vision. But when you start seeing things in relationship to Krishna, so many opportunities of service, so many unlimited varieties of opportunities of service. Just like when I was in Jagannath Puri with my spiritual master 4 years ago. Lord Jagannath and Puri, he gets how many preparations? Does anyone know? 65 preparations, almost 100 preparations of bhoga offerings every day. And every day, they cook all these preparations for Lord Jagannath, and only Lord Jagannath can eat like 100 preparations a day. You try eating 100 preparations a day, it doesn't work. Immediately when you see, I have this opportunity to serve Krishna, because Krishna's senses are never satiated. He can eat eternally. So therefore there's so much opportunity for, I can make rasagula, I can make kheer, I can make sabji, I can make rice, I can make halava, and unlimited flavors, unlimited colors. And you can do it day in, day in, day out, again and again and again and again and again, eternally, unlimitedly. This is what Radharani does in the spiritual world. She's always cooking Krishna, unlimited preparations, eternally, unlimitedly. Because the vision is, how do I give pleasure to Krishna's senses? So immediately when we have this in our consciousness, then yes, the bhakti life becomes very exciting. Becomes a little more, you become more enthused because you're thinking about yourself. So these are just some very important points that we're, I guess, inspired to talk about this morning. We don't want to be card-carrying members of the Hare Krishna movement. Oh, I have what is it? I've got my visa, whatever you call it, my license. I'm a Hare Krishna. I come to the Sunday feast once a week. I come to Janmashtami once a year, whatever. We want to be fully drowning in the ocean of love of God, which means an ocean of unlimited devotional service. And life becomes more exciting. So yeah, it's unfortunate and it's a very tragic thing, as Prabhupada points out. We don't want to become angry with these people who are stuck in the illusory material energy. They're already so angry and frustrated. They're already so destitute of any kind of reality in this existence. The last thing you want to do is make them even more angry. Rather, let me just try and give them the real substance. And furthermore, even more tragic is that devotees, they come and they engage in devotional service and then they drop their Krishna consciousness. That's even more tragic. But in any case, they've done some devotional service. They had made some credits in their spiritual journey in this lifetime. So Lord Brahma is telling Lord Shiva here, my dear Lord, you are never bewildered by the formidable influence of the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, you are omniscient and should be merciful and compassionate towards those who are bewildered by the same illusory energy and are very much attached to fruitive activities. So this is the life and soul for those who are trying to follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas. Out of compassion, simply we go out there and try and give the best thing. And this is the only thing that everyone really needs in this day and age, just a little bit of real kindness. But because they don't understand what real kindness is, sometimes there'll be no appreciation. Therefore Krishna says, Nachatashma manusheshu kaschin me priyakritama. There's no one more dear to me than he or she who preaches this message of the Supreme Personality of God, because you're not always going to become appreciated. Actually, quite opposite. More than often, a lot of the times, people will just reject you again and again and again. But this is the sure way of trying to get the mercy of the Supreme Personality of God. We want to be able to show people the joy of serving Krishna, the joy of devotional service. We want to be able to show people how to engage everything in Krishna's service. Otherwise, we just get bewildered, attracted by the illusory energy. Oh. Hare Krishna. These are some things I guess I've been meditating on the past few days. Perhaps someone would like to add a comment or a question from our senior devotees. Any questions? I never know with you.
Thank you for that. So sometimes the devotees also can be very sober and serious. So you're saying that devotees should also be joyful so that they're attractive to the public. I guess the other devotees as well when they begin.
Yep.
So how does a devotee be serious but at the same time joyful and jolly in the execution of the Krishna consciousness?
There's a time and a place for everything. When we're doing outreach, we should really show people how blissful Krishna consciousness is. That's the best preaching, is a happy devotee. At the same time, we don't compromise our principles. What compromises our principles in Krishna consciousness is the dissatisfaction that devotees may or may not feel. Santosha, satisfaction, which is one of the qualities, one of the 21 qualities of the human being. His Holiness Shiva Ramaswamy explains, which actually he gives emphasis to this idea of satisfaction, because when devotees are not satisfied, when individuals are not satisfied, they can compromise the other 21, or specifically the first 4 principles or qualities of a human being, which is truthfulness, mercy, austerity, and cleanliness, which is, in other words, the 4 regulative principles. When devotees are not feeling satisfied within themselves, in their environment, in their devotional service, then they may lead to compromise of these 4 principles. So he was making the point that, yes, for devotees, they need to understand what it means to become satisfied. And what it means to become satisfied, it means that, he quotes this verse from the Bhagavatam, when you water the root of the tree, satisfies all the branches, the leaves, the fruits, and the twigs. So similarly, a devotee is fully engaged in devotional service, pleasing Krishna's senses, then he or she also becomes satisfied in the deepest sense. Because of this satisfaction, and it's expressed in different ways, according to our psychophysical nature, it's contagious. Why is it contagious? Because in the material world, how many people do you see who are satisfied? The biggest, the richest person, apparently happy, with so much wealth and opulence. Are they satisfied? They don't have the same wealth as that person living in the ashram just eating prasadam. That's the real satisfaction, of being able to chant the holy name of the Lord or engage in devotional service. There's no satisfaction comparable to the 3 worlds in engaging in those things. Even the richest person in the material realm, sphere of existence, they don't have that kind of satisfaction. So 2 phenomena happens. A phenomena happens when you seriously engage in devotional service. 2 things happen. Number 1, materially, we become satisfied. Devotees no longer hanker about, I need a bigger house, I need a bigger car, I need a nose job or something like that. No, they just become satisfied by what they've got, what karma allows, what they're predisposed for this lifetime. I can't change my external circumstances. So they're just satisfied. Okay, I'm not going to be this rich, I'm never going to get a big house, it's just whatever Krishna wants, that's fine. That's one phenomena when we engage in serious devotional service. The second phenomena is that we become spiritually thirsty. We can never get enough of serving Krishna. I need to chant more with attention. I need to distribute more books. I need to do something more for Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. So it's a bit of a paradox, but actually this is the real satisfaction. It's unending nectar. That's the bliss that we've always been hankering after for lifetime after lifetime. Anandam buddhivardhanam. Materially, you become satisfied. Okay, no more. This is just the way I am. I'm going to be an artist. I'm just a musician. I'm just this. I'm a melancholy, or whatever external circumstance, karmic package you've got. That's just, you just have to be satisfied with it, because you're not going to be able to change it. But internally, the devotee is thinking, how can I serve Krishna more? You become thirsty for more service, how to serve better, how to serve more. And so these dynamics are there for someone who's seriously engaged in devotional service. There's a time and place for everything. And who knows, the people who are looking really sober, I remember there was one kind of conversation, there's that picture of Srila Prabhupada in the Signs of Self-Realization. He's looking super great, right? And someone had asked him, one of the guests or something like that, you look really miserable. Well, what was Prabhupada's response? He said, this is one of my most ecstatic moments. How can you tell, From the external vision, what can we really see? Devotees have issues because they don't bathe their consciousness in Shastra. They don't bathe their mind. They don't read the books. If you don't read the books, if you're not seeing through chakra, chakshus, then there's so many complications. Oh, this person, Prabhu looks like that Prabhu looks like this, but do you see how he's engaged in devotional service? Do you see the appetite for this person's devotional service? Do you see the incredible devotional service this Prabhu is doing for the Guru and Krishna? Oh, he just looks grave. That's all we see in the external platform, right? Like this guy, so Prabhupada looks really miserable. Right? But this is my most ecstatic moment. But he fails to see that Prabhupada's engaging in so much incredible service. Now, if we read the books, if we bathe our consciousness in Srimad Bhagavatam, then we understand actually this may not be the way I'm perceiving things. Because what can you really perceive with your mundane senses, especially in the neophyte stage of Krishna consciousness? He looks happy, he looks sad, she looks out of it, she looks into it. You know, this is the kind of calculations we make in the beginning, isn't it? You know, when I first came to Bhakti Yoga, you know, Bhakti Rajavalakam, oh, that one's out of it. Oh, they look onto it. You know, you make this calculation. He looks serious. Oh, I don't want to get close to that one. But what do we really know? What can you really see? You want to see, then you have to see through Shastra. Even this is one of Krishna's qualities. 20th quality is Krishna always sees through the eyes of Shastra, even himself. Shastra emanates from Krishna, but he's seeing through it. You know? By example, we need to learn how to see things through the eyes of Srimad Bhagavatam, and you can't be bewildered. The problem with neophyte devotees is that they just take too much emphasis in their senses, in their mind. Like, oh, I'm feeling like this, I'm feeling like that. Oh, we get overwhelmed like that, you know, but if we don't see things in the right perspective, we can become overwhelmed. So therefore, guidance is absolutely necessary. If you don't have a lot of Gyan and Vigyan, knowledge and realization, there has to be some kind of guidance. We need to bathe our consciousness through these books so we see things in the right way. Hare Krishna, thank you very much for your patience. Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premananda.